There were still a couple of parts that were unpainted and unassembled, and a couple of these could be assembled before paint, and that is done with some Tamiya plastic cement that bonds plastic together pretty much permanently and works really well if it's not a painted surface. So these parts were firstly assembled and then glued together with that cement from Tamiya. After that had cured and all the rest of the parts that need to be painted were cleaned up a bit, I could move on to, of course, primer and then some various colors. With all of the airbrushing now finished, I could move on to masking off some other parts. In this case, I'm talking about the clear parts with the supplied masking from the kit, and then paint those black edges with a brush in a couple of light coats with some Bellow flat black. Some other parts could use some weathering and a bit of depth, so I applied some Panaline accent colors to those. The kit provides you with a couple of carbon fiber decals for on the front and also on the side of the car. I didn't really like that on the side, so I cut my own from the template that was supplied in the kit decals onto some carbon fiber decals from Scale Production, and then carefully placed them onto the body and formed them with some decal setting and softening solution. For the decals on the front, I did decide to use the kit decals because there were a lot of different shapes and pretty complicated shapes, and I thought it would be just as easy to use the ones from the kit instead of cutting my own. With those decals now all in place and conformed to shape, I moved on to doing a bit more assembly with some super glue and of course all the parts that needed to be put into those places. There is also a small silver decal that for the kit instructions is supposed to be placed on the headlight lens, and I didn't really see the reason why, so I just placed it on the headlight bucket as that looked a lot better. And with that done and moved out of the way, I could move on to some more assembly. The taillights of this kit have a pretty cool design. They consist of multiple parts, and instead of just doing the outside lens in the transparent color, this time you are supposed to do the inside lens in the actual color, which really gives a super cool effect and looks absolutely stunning. After gluing these lenses in place, I noticed that it would have been a lot nicer if I painted the black border around it with a permanent marker as I usually do, but in this case I decided not to do it and kind of regretted it. It's not too big of a decision to regret, but it's still a small detail and it does look good in the end, but it could have been a bit better. So that's a good thing to know if you're going to build this kit. The side exit exhausts remain a bit visible after you glue them in place through all the vents and those cut holes in the side, so I decided to weather them a bit after looking at some reference photos. It just looked like it needed a bit of bronze weathering, so I just added a tiny amount of weathering to it with a Tamiya weathering set and then glued it in place. In order to glue the antenna and another part on the roof, you need to drill holes from inside out. They are not pre-drilled, though they are pre-marked, so you know exactly where they need to be drilled and also know a bit of the size, as the hole is smaller and bigger and you just have to drill it out yourself. You can either do it with a knife or with a pin vise and some small drill bits. Before I could glue the wing in place, I needed to apply a couple of decals to it because it's a lot easier to do it now, as I can still rotate and turn it all places that I need to in order to conform these decals to the part. And when it was attached to the body, that would have been a lot harder and a lot of other parts would have been in the way as well. The rear view mirrors were also put in place with some super glue, and then I could apply a couple of decals to the canards and glue those in as well, and move on to the biggest job of all, applying all of the decals on the entire body. With the fourth canard now glued in place, that was pretty much it for parts that needed to apply to the body, so I could move on to the final stage, and that is decals. Before applying the decals, I laid down a small thin layer of decal setting solution to help glue them and also form them a tiny bit better to the pieces. And if they didn't really want to form with the setting solution, I decided to use some softening solution on top of it, a hairdryer, and even a Q-tip or a cotton swab to form it a bit better, and all the other stuff that I usually use in applying the decals. I have more videos that go in depth about decaling. Pretty much all decals apply the same way. Some setting solution, some softening solution, and a lot of patience is what you need, and that's pretty much it. Now, I know that a couple of you guys will probably not be happy that I did not clear coat the decals and say that it's not protected. Well, you are partly right and partially wrong. The decals themselves are pre-clear coated from the factory. Now, it is correct that they might fall off, fade away, or some other stuff over time, but if you keep it out of the sun and into a protective case, it should be good. Now, it's not the best solution, but in this case the body color is supposed to be a flat color and the decals are supposed to be a glossy color, and I did not really feel that it would have been a good decision to clear coat it in a flat, then mask everything off and clear coat those decals in a gloss. It wouldn't really look good in my opinion. So in this case, I decided to go this route, and I think it should be fine over time. And with that decal put into place, that is the end of this build. All the decals are on, all the parts are on, and it is finished. On to the next one. I hope you really enjoyed this video series. It's a bit different from my usual stuff. Maybe I'll do more of this in the future, as I really did like this kit. It went together super well, no problems whatsoever. If it comes to fitment, the decals worked well, and the overall look is really cool in my opinion.